In this video, we will discuss some interesting facts about some famous personalities who are first in India to achieve something or who have done some remarkable work. Male. One, did you know who was the first governor of Bengal? Lord Clive was the first governor of Bengal from year 1757 to 60. 2. Did you know who was the last governor of Bengal? Warren Hastings was the last governor of Bengal from year 1772 to 74. 3. Did you know who was the first Governor General of Bengal? Warren Hastings was the first Governor General of Bengal from year 1774 to 85. 4. Did you know who was the first Governor General of India? The answer is Lord William Bentinck was the first Governor General of India from year 1833 to 35. 5. Did you know who was the last Governor General and first Viceroy of India? The answer is Lord Canning was the last Governor General and first Viceroy of India from year 1856 to 62. 6. Did you know who was the first president of Indian National Congress? The answer is W.C. Banerjee was the first president of Indian National Congress. It was very surprising to know this fact. 7. Did you know who was the first Indian Governor General of independent India? The answer is C. Rajagopalachari from year the 21st of June 1948, the 25th of January 1950, was the first Indian Governor General of independent India. 8. Did you know who was the first Indian to pass ICS? The answer is Surendra Nath Banerjee was the first Indian to pass ICS. Definitely, it was a proud moment for him and all of us. 9. Did you know who was the first Indian ICS officer? The answer is Satyendra Nath Tagore was the first Indian ICS officer. Many congratulations, sir. 10. Did you know who was the first Governor General of India after independence? The answer is Lord Louis Mountbatten was the first Governor General of India after independence from year the 15th of August 1947, the 20th of June 1948. 11. Did you know who was the first Indian cosmonaut to go into space? The answer is Skin L. Dr. Rakesh Sharma was the first Indian cosmonaut to go into space. 12. Did you know who was the first temporary president of the Constituent Assembly? The answer is Dr. Sachida Nayan Sinha was the first temporary president of the Constituent Assembly. 13. Did you know who was the first Commander-in-Chief of Free India? The answer is General K.M. Cariappa was the first Commander-in-Chief of Free India. 14. Did you know who was the first Indian Nobel laureate? The answer is Rabindranath Tagore was the first Indian Nobel laureate. 15. Did you know who was the first Indian judge of the International Court of Justice? The answer is Dr. Nagendra Singh was the first Indian judge of the International Court of Justice. 16. Did you know who was the first Indian to get Bharat Ratna Award? The answer is Dr. S. Radhakrishnan was the first Indian to get Bharat Ratna Award. 17. Did you know who was the first Field Marshal? The answer is General S.F.J. Manekshaw was the first Field Marshal. 18. Did you know who was the President of Constituent Assembly? The answer is Dr. Rajendra Prasad was the President of Constituent Assembly. 19. Did you know who was the first Indian to swim across the English Channel? The answer is Mihir Sen was the first Indian to swim across the English Channel. 20. Did you know who was the first Indian to get Jnanpith Award? The answer is G. Shankar Kurup was the first Indian to get Jnanpith Award. 21. Did you know who was the first Muslim president of Indian Republic? The answer is Dr. Zakir Hussain was the first Muslim president of Indian Republic. 22. Did you know who was the first Indian to win Palk Strait Ocean swimming contest? The answer is Baidyanath Nath was the first Indian to win Palk Strait Ocean swimming contest. 23. Did you know who was the first speaker of Lok Sabha? The answer is G.V. Mavlankar was the first speaker of Lok Sabha from year 1952 to 57. 24. Did you know who was the first person to make printing press popular in India? The answer is James Hickey was the first person to make printing press popular in India. 25. Did you know who was the first education minister of independent India? The answer is Maulana Abul Kalam Azad was the first education minister of independent India. 26. Did you know who was the first president of Indian Republic? The answer is Dr. Rajendra Prasad was the first president of Indian Republic. 27. Did you know who was the first prime minister of independent India? The answer is P. Jawaharlal Nehru was the first prime minister of independent India. 28. Did you know who was the first home minister of independent India? The answer is Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel was the first home minister of independent India. 29. Did you know who was the first vice president of independent India? The answer is Dr. S. Radhakrishnan was the first vice president of independent India. 30. Did you know who was the first chief of air staff? The answer is Air Marshal Sir Thomas Elmhurst was the first chief of air staff. 31. Did you know who was the first Indian Air Chief of India? The answer is Air Marshal Subroto Mukherjee was the first Indian Air Chief of India. 32. Did you know who was the first Chief of Army Staff? The answer is General Maharaja Sri Rajendra Singhji Jadeja was the first Chief of Army Staff. 33. Did you know who was the first Chief of Naval Staff of India? The answer is Vice Admiral R.D. Katari was the first Chief of Naval Staff of India. 34. Did you know who was the first large-scale atomic reactor of India? The answer is Apsara was the first large-scale atomic reactor of India in the year 1956. 35. Did you know who was the first person to get Paramveer Chakra? The answer is Major Somnath Sharma was the first person to get Paramveer Chakra. Such a huge achievement it was. 36. Did you know who was the first nuclear submarine of India? The answer is INS. Chakra was the first nuclear submarine of India. 37. Did you know who was the first Indian scientist to get Nobel Prize? The answer is C.V. Raman in physics was the first Indian scientist to get Nobel Prize. 38. Did you know who was the first Indian submarine? The answer is INS. Kalvari was the first Indian submarine. 39. Did you know who was the first scientist of Indian origin to get Nobel Prize in the field of medical science? The answer is Dr. Har Gobind Khorana was the first scientist of Indian origin to get Nobel Prize in the field of medical science. 40. Did you know who was the first aircraft carrier Indian ship? The answer is INS Vikrant was the first aircraft carrier Indian ship. 41. Did you know who was the first Chinese pilgrim to visit India? The answer is Fa Hien was the first Chinese pilgrim to visit India? 42. Did you know who was the first medium-range missile? The answer is Agni was the first medium-range missile. 43. Did you know who was the first e-business newspaper of India? The answer is Financial Express was the first e-business newspaper of India. 44. Did you know who was the first scientist of Indian origin to win Nobel Prize in Physics? The answer is Subramanian Chandrasekhar was the first scientist of Indian origin to win Nobel Prize in Physics. 45. Did you know which was the first Indian missile? The answer is Prithvi was the first Indian missile. 46. Did you know who was the first Indian to win Stalin Award? The answer is Saifuddin Kichlu was the first Indian to win Stalin Award. 47. Did you know where was the India's first nuclear center? The answer is Tarapur was the India's first nuclear center. 48. Did you know who was the first Indian to win Magsaysay Award? The answer is Acharya Vinoba Bhave, 1958, was the first Indian to win Magsaysay Award. 49. Did you know which is the India's first open university? The answer is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Open University or Telangana. Open University is the India's first open university. 50. Did you know who was the India's first minister to resign from Union Cabinet? The answer is Shyama Prasad Mukherjee was the India's first minister to resign from Union Cabinet in the year 1950. 51. Did you know who was the first British to visit Mughal court of Jahangir? The answer is William Hawkins was the first British to visit Mughal court of Jahangir, in the year 1609. 52. Did you know where was the first Asian Games organized? The answer is New Delhi was the place where first Asian Games was organized in year 1951. 53. Did you know who was the India's first election commissioner? The answer is Sukumar Sen was the India's first election commissioner. 54. Did you know who was the first Muslim president of Indian National Congress? The answer is Badruddin Tayyab Ji was the first Muslim president of Indian National Congress. 55. Did you know who was the first Chief Justice of India? The answer is Justice Hirilal J. Kania was the first Chief Justice of India. 56. Did you know who was the first person to submit the proposal of Indian independence in a Congress session? The answer is Maulana Hazrat Mohani was the first person to submit the proposal of Indian independence in a Congress session. 57. Did you know where is the India's first organized university? The answer is Nalanda University is the India's first organized university. 58. Did you know who was the first Indian to climb Mount Everest without oxygen cylinder? The answer is Sherpa Fu Dorji was the first Indian to climb Mount Everest without oxygen cylinder. 59. Did you know who was the first foreign recipient of Bharat Ratna? The answer is Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan was the first foreign recipient of Bharat Ratna. 60. Did you know who was the first Indian recipient of Nobel Prize in Economics? The answer is Dr. Amartya Sen was the first Indian recipient of Nobel Prize in Economics. 61. Did you know where is the first Army Institute of Information Technology founded? The answer is Hyderabad is the first Army Institute of Information Technology founded. 62. Did you know who is the first test tube baby of India? The answer Harsha Chadha is the first test tube baby of India. 63. Did you know who was the first Indian pilot? The answer is JRD. Tata was the first Indian pilot in the year 1929. 64. Did you know who was the first Indian to reach Antarctica? The answer is Lieutenant Ram Charan was the first Indian to reach Antarctica in the year 1960. 65. Did you know where was the first post office opened in India? The answer is Kolkata. Where was the first post office opened in India in the year 1727. 66. Did you know who was the first Deputy Prime Minister of India? The answer is Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel was the first Deputy Prime Minister of India. 67. Did you know who was the first Indian Prime Minister to resign from office? The answer is Morarji Desai was the first Indian Prime Minister to resign from office. 68. Did you know who was the first Indian Prime Minister to lose an election? The answer is Indira Gandhi was the first Indian Prime Minister to lose an election. 69. Did you know who was the first President of India to die in office? The answer is Dr. Zakir Hussain was the first President of India to die in office. 70. Did you know who was the first man to climb Mount Everest twice? The answer is Nawang Gambu. Sherpa was the first man to climb Mount Everest twice. 71. Did you know who was the first Indian to reach the South Pole? The answer is Colonel J.K. Bajaj was the first Indian to reach the South Pole. It would have been a long and scary journey. 72. Did you know who was the first Indian recipient of Oscar Award? The answer is Bhanu Athaiya was the first Indian recipient of Oscar Award. 73. Did you know who was the first American president to visit India? The answer is Dwight David Eisenhower was the first American president to visit India. 74. Did you know who was the first British Prime Minister to visit India? The answer is Harold Macmillan was the first British Prime Minister to visit India. 75. Did you know who was the first Indian author to get Anderson Award? The answer is Ruskin Bond was the first Indian author to get Anderson Award. 76. Did you know who was the first Indian to win World Billiards Trophy? The answer is Wilson Jones was the first Indian to win World Billiards Trophy. 77. Did you know who was the first Indian space tourist? The answer is Santosh George Kulangara was the first Indian space tourist. I hope you people must have enjoyed my video, so please share it, like it, and don't forget to subscribe my channel that is Unheard Clue.